animators and artists. Adam Oliver is a 2D animator with a professional career spanning more than a decade and is also a trainer who specializes in teaching Toon Boom Harmony through his website, Adam's Animation Academy. Recently, Adam started a YouTube channel where he shares tips, tricks, and advice for artists. Adam, welcome to the stream.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for joining us. So, for our viewers tuning in live, if you have questions for Adam about his courses or about learning 2D rigging and animation, feel free to send us a message in the chat, and we might just answer your question live on the air. Adam, when I invite artists onto our stream, I like to ask about their day-to-day work. What does your typical schedule at Adam's Animation Academy look like?
Yeah, it's pretty varied actually, because it's started off as a little part-time project. I used to work as a full-time animator. My last full-time studio job was at Brown Bag Films when it was here in Manchester. So I left there and I started this side project whilst animating freelance, and it was something that I was doing kind of evenings and weekends. And then all of a sudden it became okay. People want to learn this stuff that I'm teaching, and how's this day going to establish itself, how's this business going to start to form. So it became something like it is now, where I split my time between working with studios, doing training for ready for new productions, maybe new people who are coming in who need to learn the latest software and get a bit of onboarding up to speed and so on. And then there's all kinds of other things that are starting to develop, like the YouTube channel that I started as a little side project again, and a couple of collaborative sort of like ex-student projects, people who've done the courses and now are starting to want to make films in the software as well.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, as a trainer, who's your ideal student? What should you already know, and what should you want to learn if you're taking a course at Adams Animation Academy?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Well, it depends on the course, because we have a couple of different ones. We started off with our very first course was kind of like a crash course over 4 weeks, where we tried to teach as much as possible, but it was a little bit more basic. As the sort of the appetite became a little bit larger, and also studios like here in the UK where I am started to want people who are more skilled in certain areas. So it wasn't I just want a little bit of Toon Boom knowledge. All of a sudden it was, we need you to know how to animate. We need you to know how to rig. So then we split the courses in two, and then people got that. Now people know how to animate and rig basics. So now it's like, okay, I want to become a bit more of an expert in this. Like, how do I take my animation to the next level? How do I rig much more complex characters? So that's the next courses. Now the more advanced ones, they require you to know those basics. But in terms of like the perfect student, I just want somebody who's keen and excited to learn, really, who's passionate about it. I don't really have any prerequisites about where they come from, or like where in the world they're learning from, or their experience up to that point. It's just when they're excited about learning, that's kind of the rewarding part for me, because we're kind of like collaborating on their sort of, sounds a bit cheesy, but collaborating on their dreams, their projects, and so on. And I can kind of like get the fun part of seeing them progress and help them out, and it gives me that little kick. So it's, yeah, that's kind of, for me, as long as you're up for it and you're kind of keen to learn, then I'm all for it.
So, Adam, one of the reasons we invited you onto the show was to show off an example rig used in your courses. Do you want to take us on a quick tour of this character?
Yes, of course. Let me just switch things around a little bit. Yeah,
And which course is this character for?
so this course, this character has been built for the advanced rigging course. So this is the one you learn to build on the advanced rigging course. This is Jada, and basically the rig itself is taking you into, it's a 360 degree. It doesn't go through every single last angle, but it's learning how to build the most useful angles, and add these kind of control panels and things that are very common now, that you see on like Toon Boom demos when they do software releases and so on. Harmony 21, built on those kind of features as well. So that's kind of why this course is established, is because now we're getting to a point where it's really important you know how to build these kind of rigs and have this functionality. So this is just a simple couple of poses that I put in here before the call, just to show you how things are working. And it's very similar to what a lot of things you'll be used to, where it's got a lot of deformers on all the different parts. We've got the auto kind of like part of the sleeve that's visible there. We've got our different hand shapes that we can switch between. So they're all things that most people are used to. We've got these non-rendering sort of selector little tabs, and they don't render, which is kind of nice, because obviously that'd be a bit of a pain to get rid of those. And then we've got master controllers as well. So if I just slide onto here a little bit and hide the background. So we've got these, so we can move the head around, and we've got some presets of mouth shapes, which are all linked on this master controller grid wizard. So the mouth shapes can change, and then when we go to the three-quarter back, it snaps into position, because one of the things that's becoming really common with these 360 rigs is that you build a rig that looks and turns really smoothly, but when you take it to an animator, they go, well, I can't use half of those angles because they're all off model, and the animation director's pulling their hair out. So what we end up doing is building a rig where it kind of puts in the most on model poses, and that's why we have this kind of snapping here, because we basically would probably very rarely use that, and we would just make sure the poses are on model. The profile one as well has a really nice like mouth cutting option, which is different to when we're on the front and the three-quarters. So there's those little things built in, little features like eyelids that can be revealed, and using these little selectors. And yeah, just a couple of nice features like that. We have a little demo of the deformer on deformer, the all hallowed deformer on deformer, where you've got the option to move the outside of the shape and the inside as well. I think Toon Boom snuck in an improvement on this and didn't actually like mention it when they brought out 21, but I found there was issues with it before. It was because it was a new thing, and now it works really well. So I expect to probably see this kind of thing in production rigs in the future. But yeah, we've got some nice features. We learn how to use the what is kind of like IK, inverse kinematics, so we can move parts of the legs around. And this is kind of a new thing. This isn't really in many production rigs in terms of animation studios. It allows you to kind of keep the foot locked without having to switch the drawing of the leg. So some of the limitations that we had before are starting to kind of gradually disappear, because the software is advancing, and it's coming really nicely together. So that's why I kind of set this up and built this course.
All right, that's awesome. And can you just give us a run through of the different controllers that you have on that rig?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. I'll show you those now. Hang on a second. So let's just go into here. And so what happens with these controllers is they try to keep them as basic as possible, so we don't get too much. Let me just change the background here so we can see this a little better. Okay, so we have the head controls, which is obviously going to move the head around in different angles, and the mouth shapes on the side. Then we have something for the eyelid posing, which the eyes tend to be more and more important in terms of creating these curves and so on very easily. I know some people like to see a rig where you can move the pupils with a controller like this, but to be honest, because they're just single circles, it's really easy to shift select them and move them around. So we don't need really a controller for that. That's one of the things I talk about in the course as well. And I'm sure people who are familiar with building these kind of rigs will also testify to. It's all about the kind of like the balance. This is the creative aspect of rigging, is to know how many controls to give. Because as a rigger, you get super excited about, oh, look at all this cool stuff I can put in here. And then the animators just kind of like their head falls off when they go into the studio in the morning, because they've got to navigate like 99 different buttons. So I'm trying to limit all the different things that are in there to confuse the process. We've got to get that fine balance between functionality and kind of like time-saving tools and just visuals, that we can select on the screen. So we've got a little upper body rotation slider here, and then we've got one for the lower body that takes the legs to different angles, which is just a bit of a time saver. And then if
That's
you really
cool.
mess stuff up, you can do a full body reset, which is just a slider that affects everything. So basically, these kind of master controllers, we have to tell the software how many things we want it to influence. So this one influences everything, because I've found quite a few rigs that people have built, but they don't actually, there's no reset, and then we have to go and find the original file and bring things back in. And then there's also just a slider here for some reusable poses, because putting the arms above the head is a bit of a time consuming thing to get it all nicely posed out. So this would probably be stocked up with all the ones like bending of the legs and so on, which is something that's commonly used.
Yeah, it's a clever solution.
So yeah, that's about it for all the fancy stuff in terms of the controls on that one.
In your opinion, what is the most challenging aspect of this rig, and what are you most proud of?
The challenging aspect, the word of warning for anybody who's thinking about doing the course, is when we start to look inside and we're crisscrossing lots of things. The patching of the lines, so to speak, to get the correct visuals, to get things working nicely in Z depth and so on. So we've got a couple of things in there that you sort of have to get your head around slowly, and it's sort of a logical process to kind of understand how we use patches and masks and so on. I think that's the bit I'm also proud of, because I think I've done a pretty good job of explaining it. It takes a lot of edits and a lot of tries and a lot of cuts to make sure that you explain it, you watch it back. I show it to my wife, who is not an animator, and if she kind of understands it a little bit, then I'm like, okay, I'm on the right lines here. She's getting it. So that's the sort of thing that I'm trying to get across, and it's tricky, but it's rewarding as well.
Yeah, it's always good to have a second person to talk to when you're testing out a course or instructions like that.
Yeah,
Because if it already makes sense to you, it's hard to tell if your instructions are good.
yeah.
Speaking of instructions, I really like your YouTube channel where you share tips, tricks, and advice for artists. Can you give our viewers a sense of the kinds of topics that you cover?
Yeah, so the YouTube channel was started, like I said, as a bit of a side project. I've actually wanted to do it for probably longer than I set up the courses, but there's always this kind of fear, isn't it, when you start to do something and you're putting yourself out there and you're just recording yourself. You feel like a bit of a lemon just sitting in front of a screen talking to your camera. But I finally got myself together and did a few, and it came from because the fact during the teaching of things, lots of people kept asking the same questions, and then I'd record them a little video if it was complicated, and then I was like, I might as well put these on YouTube now because I'm getting to this point. So it's the idea of it was to fill in all the gaps that I couldn't do in the course, or that were buried too far in the course, and obviously YouTube being part of Google, people search for things and then hopefully they find the solution. So it was started as a bit of a, okay, I'm going to use it as an information dump for all those little bits of information, and then people start naturally saying, hey, well, what about this idea, or could you do this, or and some of the things, you'll get requests, people saying, can you teach me how to use the software to a professional level? I'm like, I don't have that much time, unfortunately, but those kind of things do I guess they create new opportunities, because if somebody watches something and goes, I don't really understand that, or they really want to understand something in the software, but actually it leads you to another question which would help them get over that initial hurdle. So it's a really nice way of getting in touch with people, really personally quite early on, because YouTube, it breaks down a lot of barriers in terms of, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, what you're doing, somebody can watch your video 5 years after you've recorded it, and they're still going to get that benefit from it, and maybe ask you a question and you can lead them on to the answer. So it's really nice. I like getting the comments for people asking questions. I've got a big long list of stuff I want to cover, so I just need more hours in the day so I can actually get to it. But yeah, it started off as just tips and tricks, and then it's starting to evolve a little bit more now as well.
Speaking of the tips and tricks, I saw that you had a video about organizing your timeline. Adam, why is organization an important skill for artists who are working in animation?
Yeah, it's a big one. This, it's. I know some people will think like there's a bit of the cliche about the disorganized artist and things, but like the professional artist has to be organized to get stuff done. You know, you're doing it every day, and animation's no different. If anything, it needs you to be really organized because you've got so many frames and so many layers and all this kind of thing. So you've got to start right. You've got to have things labeled correctly. If you have layer one, layer two, layer three on your timeline, you're never going to find which thing you want to actually click and move and edit and so on. And it just goes from there. In terms of the timeline, I like to make sure that things are organized and selected and hidden if you don't need to show them. And those kind of little optimizations saving people little minute or two here, a minute or two there, multiplied over a 2-year production is like your 2-week holiday. All of a sudden you've saved yourself in extra clicks and shortcuts and things. So it's, I think, small increments. I often try and tell people who are a little bit further down the line in terms of learning that it's, you've got to try and look for those like 1% improvements over a week or something like that if you're trying to actively improve your workflow. I get a lot of questions from people saying, I want to improve my workflow, I want to improve my process. um, I'm not saying everybody has to do that kind of thing. It's totally fine if you're happy with it, but if you are looking to improve, you don't have to do big things. It's the tiny little bits, those will make your life a little bit easier when you come to animating and rigging.
Sort of like, hey, you don't need to do it the long way because there's a button that does this one task that you're trying to do.
Yeah, or a shortcut, or sometimes even the simple thing is actually to do a couple of steps that are manual, as opposed to,
Hmm.
I've seen people try and use scripts and workarounds and, master controllers and other things for something that actually would probably be easier to do a little bit more of an old fashioned, I say old fashioned, like 5 years
Yeah,
ago.
hey, you can just grab that curve.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that sort of thing. Just like I said about the pupils, just grabbing them rather than trying to create controllers for things. And then, it's not always the easiest way to do the latest version of something. But that's why animation is fun, and that's why building characters in this software is fun. Is because every single last character, every single last production, it's infinite, the different possibilities, because they're all different and they've all got different challenges. So you never really get bored doing it.
Yeah, we touched on this question a little bit, but what led you to start your YouTube channel? Why did you decide that you wanted to have a channel for Adam's Animation Academy?
Yeah, so like I said, it was a little bit to just put some quick tips and videos out there so that I could share them with people. I guess out of my own, trying to save my own time a little bit there, and optimize things. But it grew from that because I started to get opportunities and ideas to do other things. I would always love to do longer, more in depth, beautifully edited videos, but they take a long time to do. And I have a massive respect for people who do those things now, because I used to think, wow, they do them at the weekend. That's kind of a fun hobby. But then when you start to do it, you're like, I need an extra life to be able to do this YouTube channel. It takes so much time. So it's a fun project, but it does open a can of worms. And so now I've gone from just doing the tips and tricks to starting to do things like maybe interviews, collaborations, those sort of bits.